What's up, guys? It's Brian Alsruhe with NeverSay.com, and I figured it was about time that I did a bench press series. Now, bench press is something that's always come a little easier to me because I was blessed with these little short T-Rex arms that help me on the bench press. Not so much on the deadlift. But I have learned a few things over the past 2 decades that hopefully I'll better share with you guys to help you guys progress quicker than I did. I can remember right back before I got my driver's license at 15 years old, I could not bench 95 pounds. And if you fast forward 20 years, I just got 505 probably about a month ago. That's like 2% progress every year. Who wouldn't want that? Now, I know there is no bench press in a strongman competition, but I know a lot of you are not involved in the strongman world, so I wanted to give you guys a video too. Plus, no one ever asked how much you squat. I couldn't really tell you why, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna be the eventual fall of our civilization, but I wanna share with you guys a couple things I've learned over the past 2 decades. Hopefully you can push more weight on the bench, get that bench out of poverty zone, but all of that has everything to do with your setup. All right, so starting off at the very beginning, most commercial benches suck and you're gonna slip around all over on it, and slipping is stupid. Don't be stupid. To combat this, I recommend that you chalk your shoulders and your traps because those are gonna be the main points of contact when you try to transfer that energy in your bench press. Another trick that I've learned is to wrap heavy bands around the bench press because that rubberized surface will help you stick, and if you stick, you push more weight. If the benches at your gym suck and they won't allow you to use chalk and you don't have any bands to use, you gotta find a better gym. Or be happy with that poverty bench. When dealing with the bench press, as well as just about every other lift, your tightness is paramount. The tighter you are, the more weight that you can move on the bar. The less tight you are, every single bit of tightness that you lose are pounds on the bar that you are not gonna be pressing. So, in order to get as tight as possible, you're going to use the bar to put yourself in the most advantageous position as possible. So in order to do this, you're gonna row yourself towards the bar. Do it the exact same way that you would if you were doing an inverted row. Pull your chest towards the bar and try to pull your shoulder blades together. That is gonna be the foundation that you're gonna press upon. Once your shoulder blades are together, you're gonna place them and your traps down on the bench. Your eyes should be under the bar or maybe even a little bit behind the bar, but not too far, or else when you go to press up, you're gonna be running into the J-hooks, and that is no good for anybody. Now, how high you arch is gonna be greatly determined by the flexibility in your spine, but the higher that you arch, the lower the range of motion, and typically the lower the range of motion, the more weight you can push. That said, if your flexibility in your spine sucks, don't push the arch. It's not that big of a deal. The biggest deal is just not laying completely flat on the bench. You should have 3 points of contact. It should be your shoulder blades / traps, and then your butt, and then your feet. As you can see here from the side, my arch is terrible, but I broke my back twice. What are you gonna do? So if you've done this correctly, you should have your eyes under the bar. You should be up on your traps / shoulders. You should have a good arch in your spine, and then you place your butt down to set the position. If your butt sticks, you're not gonna move. If your traps stick, you're not gonna move. If any of that is wrong, you're gonna be sliding around the second that you unrack that bar and you take on that weight. What you do with your feet, whether you go up on your toes or you stay on your heels, is gonna be greatly determined by what federation you compete in. And if you don't compete, don't worry about it. Do whatever feels good to you. The only points that I would hit is that your knees should probably be out past your toes. So if your feet are in front of your knees, you're not gonna get any leg drive out of that. Number 2, because of your arch, your hips should be higher than your knees. If they're not, you're leaving pounds out there. You gotta fix that. Number 3, you want to be pushing your knees outward. Some people push out super hard, some people barely push out at all, but the important thing is that you're pushing out so that your glutes are activated and your legs are stable. If you're in a good setup position, someone should be able to come from the side and push on any portion of your body, whether it be your legs, your torso, your arms, anything, and they should not move. Your tightness should be at 100% at this point. That is going to be massive. If you're not tight, you're not gonna move any weight. You have to think about your setup as the foundation on your house. If your foundation sucks, the house is gonna suck. Don't suck. All right, so now that your body is taken care of, you have to figure out what to do with your hands. I don't know what to do with my hands. So how wide you set your grip is gonna be different for every single person because we're all built differently. That said, if you get a wider grip, you will shorten the range of motion, and that is a good thing. However, your shoulder risk goes up a lot. So wider grip, I typically don't recommend most people do. If you stick your hands inside of your shoulders, you're gonna be throwing most of that force on your tricep and you're gonna take a lot of your chest out of it, which is like playing a sport with a man down, so it's not smart if you're trying to bench as much as possible. You wanna use every single muscle that you can possibly get. For most people, sticking your hands just outside of your shoulders will keep your arms perpendicular to the bar, running at a 90-degree angle, almost like pillars on a building. Pillars support weight. So I think this is probably the best option for most people, but wherever you set your grip, the most important thing to me is that you're squeezing that bar as hard as you possibly can. I've said it before, but your body works synergistically. So if you're squeezing the bar, you can recruit more muscle fibers, you can move more weight. It works on everything. It is super, super important. If you're not doing it, Do it on every single lift and you will automatically move up pounds. It's just like if you can't open a jar, don't focus on twisting harder, focus on squeezing the jar with your other hand and you'll be able to open it. Or you won't and you'll look stupid. What do you lift weights for anyway, man? Can't open a jar. The second thing you should be doing with your hands is trying to bend the bar like a horseshoe like you see me doing here. This is going to do a couple things for you. Number one, it's going to lock in your lats, and number two, it's going to make the bar feel lighter. If you're squeezing the bar and you're trying to bend it like a horseshoe, it's going to feel better in your hands, and how something feels in your hands 100% has to do with how you're going to perform on that lift. You've all been there before. When you unrack something and it feels light, you have confidence. When you unrack it and your body says, wait a second, champ, you're not ready for this. You don't have confidence and you typically don't perform as well, so make sure you're making that bar feel as light as possible by squeezing it and bending it like a horseshoe. Which brings us to unracking the bar. Now, if you spend all that time on your setup, getting as tight as possible, getting everything perfect, and then you unroll your shoulders to get that bar out of the rack, you just undid every single thing that you've done. Don't do that, man. Unrolling your shoulders takes all the tightness out of your upper back, which means that you're benching with a flat back, and flat back benchers do not move a lot of weight. You might as well be benching like this guy. Don't do that. So the best case scenario is to have a friend come over and unrack the bar for you, and then you have a spotter just in case that bar ends up on your neck. Now, if you can't find a friend to help you out, you need to work on those social skills. But if you're anything like me and you do not have any friends, you can unrack the bar with this technique, and it kind of makes it like you're taking the bar out of a monolift. All right, so basically what I'm doing here is I get my setup completely perfect. My legs are engaged, my feet are where I want them, my butt's engaged, my lats are engaged. I'm squeezing the bar, I'm bending it like a horseshoe. And then I raise my butt off the bench, I lift the bar out of the rack, and then I put my butt back down exactly where it was before. This changes the pivot point of the lift so the bar actually moves out in front of the J-hook, so now you're clear to bench. However, if you stick your butt down in a different place than where you originally had it set, your tightness is going to be different, you're going to be screwed up. Don't do that. Put your butt down exactly where it left the bench. Now, you can't bench heavy weights if you're not breathing correctly, and this is how I personally do it. A lot of people do it differently, but this is just how I do it. So if I'm going for 1 to 3 reps, I will get my breath before I unrack the bar. Now, getting a huge belly breath and bracing is still super important on the bench, even though you wouldn't think so because your back is not supporting the weight. But getting that big belly breath and bracing it down is massively important. That's why you see guys still wearing belts. Some of it's because you're sticking your back in some pretty gnarly positions with that arch, but number two, it's so that their transverse abdominis has something to press against, and that belt is almost a reminder to get as much air into that belly as possible. Now, for me personally, much like on the overhead press, I can never get as much air into my belly when I'm under load as I can without, so I get a huge belly breath and brace it down before I unrack the bar. The very last thing I do, I squeeze the bar, I bend it like a horseshoe, huge belly breath, unrack, bring the bar down, press it up, and then I let the air out. That entire first rep is all on the same breath. I will do this for anywhere between 1 to 3 reps depending on how many I'm going for. If at that point I need to take in more air, I will get my air at the top of the rep. So let's say I take my breath, I unrack the bar, I get 3 reps, and I need more oxygen. So at lockout, I will rebreathe, take a couple little breaths, rebrace, huge belly breath, rebrace, and then drop in for reps 2 or 3, 4. And then I just continue this pattern for as long as needed, depending on how many reps I plan on doing. Never ever breathe when the barbell is in motion unless it's at the very end, right near your lockout, and you're just letting that air out. If you're trying to inhale while lowering a bar in any exercise, it is not going to go well for you, or at least not as well as it would have if you would have gotten your breath and you would have braced prior to lifting it. Lifting time is lifting time. Breathing time is breathing time. They're separate. Write that down. All right, so spoiler alert, we are not gonna talk about pressing the bar, cues, or leg drive in this video. That's all gonna come in part 2. But I am gonna address lowering the bar because that is massively important, because if you do not lower it correctly, it is not gonna go back up. Now, if you're following all the other tips on this video, you should be bending that bar like a horseshoe, and that's gonna become very important when you're lowering it because you need those lats engaged. When you're lowering a bar, it is an active motion. You are in control of the bar. The bar is not in control of you. And if you are just letting that thing drop down and bounce off your chest, number 1, I apologize to your sternum, and number 2, you suck. Don't do that. In your mind, you want to think about actively rowing this bar to your chest the exact same way that you would if you're doing a bent over row or a pen lay row. This rowing motion started with you bending the bar like a horseshoe and then you tucking your elbows as the bar comes down. If you do not keep your elbows tucked on the way down, when you go to press back up, your elbows will flare out. Everyone does. That's you trying to engage more chest into the press. But if when you lowered it, your elbows were already out, they have no place to flare and you have no more horsepower, and that means the bar is not going to continue to progress. You need to keep those elbows tucked so when you do push, you have somewhere else to go That will lead to bigger numbers. Now, where you touch the bar on your chest is gonna be different from person to person. A lot of people try to touch at the highest point of their arch, and for some people, that is the top of their belly, especially people with a decent amount of strongman or powerlifting girth. However, if you don't have a big belly, I'd probably recommend that you touch just below your nipple line. You don't wanna go too far above your nipple line, otherwise you're gonna guillotine yourself with the bar, and it's not really gonna go anywhere, and you can't keep your elbows tucked when your hands are up here, not even with T-Rex arms like me. Come on, T-Rex arms. And the speed at which you descend is going to be 100% determined by the weight on the bar. You should only descend as quickly as you can control that weight. Think about someone dive bombing a squat. That may work for some people, but it is a very, very few minority. If you're just dropping the bar on your chest, number one, your spleen hates you, and number two, the bar is controlling you. You are not in control of the bar, so you're just kind of hoping for the best at that point. Yeah, it may help you right now with your 100-pound, 200-pound bench, but you try doing that with like 400, 500, 600 pounds, I'll come visit you in the hospital. So you wanna lower that bar as quickly as possible, but only as quickly as you can comfortably control that weight. The second you let weight and gravity take over, the bar is in control of you. You're not in control of the bar. At best case scenario, you're gonna miss a lift. Worst case scenario, your buddy is going to be rowing whatever weight you have on the bar off of you. But rows are important, so maybe your buddy will thank you. All right, guys, so that's part one of my bench series. Like I said, in part two, we're actually gonna deal with pushing the bar. I'm gonna talk about cues, I'm gonna talk about where to push the bar, your bar path, I'm gonna talk about leg drive. I already have an entire video about leg drive, but I am gonna cover it again because I have some new things to say about it. But hopefully this was informative to some of you, and some of you got some ideas on things that you didn't know before. If you guys didn't notice, I am sick, and that always seems to happen before a competition. Maybe it's because of the weight cut, maybe it's because bad things always happen before the competition just to stress you out. But don't worry, I have 10 days to the national championships, which should be plenty of time to get rid of whatever this is. I do really appreciate you guys watching. You guys are awesome. If you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them in the section down below. I will be seeing you guys later in the week because I plan on doing a video about my weightlifting journey, like where I began, the different methods that I followed to get to where I am today. Should be a good video for some of you. I'm also gonna show you guys a picture of me when I was 15, like I talked about when I couldn't bench 95 pounds, I've got a picture, and it's gonna be interesting. A lot of people wanna say that I have amazing genetics or that I'm a freak of nature or whatever. I'm a highly average guy that has spent a lot of time working on his craft. You guys will see. There's literally nothing extra special about me other than the fact that I'm too stupid to know when to quit. So I'm gonna walk you guys through that, talk to you guys about my journey. Hopefully it'll help encourage some of you guys and kind of fill you guys in on what I've done over the past 23 years of lifting. But like I said, I do really appreciate you guys watching. If you did find this helpful, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. That'd be awesome. But until I see you later in the week, keep working hard, go out, do something amazing with your lives, be nice to each other, and I will see you then.